Chappie, he says, why do you think The Thing 2011 prequel failed at the box office despite the cult following? Do you think it was bad marketing since you didn't tell if it was a prequel, then the remake, or the bad CGI? Well, I think it's a combination of all those things. And also, I think when it came out, yeah, The Thing, even in 2011, The Thing was, considered one of the greatest horror films of all time. And I think The Thing grows in popularity with every year. But I think I almost think that the Carpenter's thing is almost like sacred ground, and it's like we don't want to like mess that up. Having said that, I do actually enjoy quite a few things about the original as far as like feeling like it belongs in Carpenter's world. It even, like, the end of that gives me chills, how it ties perfectly in. I like how it covers the Norwegian camp, which is cool. I don't think it was, I think the CGI is what really hurt that movie. But even if they like didn't have the CGI problem, I still think the 2011 prequel, I don't think it would have been a huge box office success. At the end of the day, the Thing property is still a cult type property. So it's not a big IP. And I think that's why, you're not going to get freaking $100 million box office out of The Thing. I just don't think it's going to happen. Prove me wrong, but yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think?
No, I agree with you. And I think that people often forget that The Thing was absolutely raked over the coals when it first came out. That thing did not get good reviews. It has never, ever, it wasn't until recently, we're talking 10, 15 years ago, where the movie actually started to get looked at as like, wow, this thing is actually pretty good. And like people really started to come around to it, at least like overall, I would say, like in general with the general public. But no, it's just interesting to me that it flopped. But at the same time, it's not, because I do think it's a solid movie, but I think a lot of people just assumed it was a remake. And I don't think anybody thought it was a prequel. So already, I think the people that you would have been marketing to anyway, fans of The Thing, were probably like, no, thanks. I don't need to see a remake of The Thing. Sadly, they were wrong. It's not a remake. It actually ties in perfectly to Carpenter's movie. And it's just, it's one of those things, man. But I like the movie. If it had practical effects, it would be so much stronger. But I think it was just that was 2011. You know what I mean? 2011. That was a weird time. We go through phases in horror anyway with what's hot. And I don't think creature features were hot in 2011.
I don't even think The Thing was as hot as it is now. And The Thing is one of the very, very few movies that did what it did. That when it came out, it was a disaster. It was a massive bomb. Critics ripped it apart. Carpenter went into a deep depression, because of when it came out, and it was so ahead of its time that I don't think we were ready for that yet, even though there was some pretty crazy practical effects type stuff back then. But for some reason, I think it was like, if The Thing came out maybe 6 months before it came out, because it came out like in the summer and it came out next to E.T. I think if it came out like the October before, I think it would have fared better. But
yeah, it came out right after E.T., so everyone was like, "Oh, E.T.'s so hopeful." And The Thing is so like dour and depressing. So even if The Thing came out like in the mid to late 80s, it probably would have fared better because people were more into that. With the Fly coming out and then the Blob, both of those have that like dark feel. I mean, I guess the Blob's kind of fun, but also super brutal. But I think with the 2011. The Thing, for me, like the reason ultimately why it didn't work, and it's a shame they did do practical effects and then covered it with CG, which is just strange to me. But I think the best part about that movie is that they paid so much meticulous attention into making sure that by the end of the movie, everything looked the way it looked when the characters from John Carpenter's The Thing showed up to the Norwegian camp. However, beat for beat, it just kind of is the same movie.
It is. It's
as John Carpenter's The Thing, so it's not a remake, but it's like
not nearly as good.
The story unfolds the same way with the paranoia, so it's like they didn't have a unique way of, and I guess maybe that's like the whole point, is The Thing is gonna make that happen. So maybe that's just a lesson in don't make prequels, make something that follows after, because it would be much more interesting to see what would happen if the thing got out and got to a place that was more populated, rather than just seeing it in another Antarctic camp. I think that's the bigger issue for me, is I was just like, I've already seen this movie and I've seen it better.
Yeah, and I think it's because Carpenter directed it, if I'm being honest. Carpenter had, back when Carpenter was on fire, my opinion, he was unfucking touchable. Carpenter had such a distinct flavor when he was putting out freaking Escape from New York and The Thing and Halloween. And I just think that The Thing feels so much like Carpenter that I think it was just kind of an anomaly, not a fluke because it was Carpenter doing it, but an anomaly. And I think if it came out today with a different director, I don't know. Yeah. There's something about Carpenter's direction back then that, man, there's nothing like it. And it's just so comfortable, you know, and it's comfortable, but it's also, nobody can capture dread like Carpenter. He just has this, like, he can just move the camera across a blank frame where it could be just like a freaking couch and a coffee table. And for some reason, he can make that scene creepy. Just the way he moves the camera. It's very few directors can capture dread the way Carpenter did in his heyday. You know, I think most. Having
Dean Cundey there certainly helps. You know, exactly. It's like it's a whole team of people, and the Kurt Russell John Carpenter connection is pretty incredible. And somebody had mentioned the Ennio Morricone soundtrack, which is really cool. One of the few times where Carpenter let somebody else make music for one of his movies, but it's so fitting to that original, or to John Carpenter's The Thing from '82.
And he's so grounded. Like there was a video that because we look at the little the reels on Instagram, and there was a reel with Carpenter recently, and he's so grounded. Like he went to this party with all these other iconic directors, and he said Cronenberg was there, and he's just kind of standing around in the back, and he's not trying to like show off or anything like that. And he said Cronenberg's got like a crowd of people around him, and he's like holding court, and Carpenter just tries to like go up to Cronenberg. He's a peer, and he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he said Cronenberg didn't want to have anything to do with him. And Carpenter was like, "You know what? Fuck this," and he just left.
I love it. John Carpenter's punk rock, man.
Yeah, he's so punk rock.
He is punk rock, yeah.
Well, hello there. You just watched an outrageous clip from the Hit the Bricks podcast. I really hope you enjoyed that clip. If you want to see more clips, you can click here, or you can click here, and you can just have yourself a ball, all right? And also follow the Hit the Bricks podcast on Spotify as well. Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful day.